Even though he died 20 years ago and became Pope, over 40 years ago, he's somebody that really still resonates very deeply with young people.
What do you think young people get wrong about theology of the body today?
We're not simply creatures of this world, but we're really in this world to prepare for an eternity of joy and union with God beyond anything we can possibly imagine.
Welcome back to the Everyday Saint podcast. It's Catholic communicator Eve Rosemary, and I am so excited for today's episode because we are bringing on the chaplain of the St. John Paul II National Shrine, Father Bill Ferguson, and you'll see him come up a couple times during the St. John Paul II series because he has been a priest ordained for 20 years now, but not only that, he has a certification in theology of the body in particular. This is absolutely fascinating because how often do we get the perspective of a priest when it comes to theology of the body, and how more fitting than to be the chaplain at the St. John Paul II National Shrine. So today we're going to hear his perspective a little bit on his work as chaplain at this shrine, communicating the dignity of the human person, and I'm really excited for you to listen, so let's go. Welcome, Father Bill.
Well, thanks, Eve. Good to be here.
Yes, well, why don't you just start off by telling us a little bit about yourself as a priest, how you got here, how you really got into your vocation and then ended up as chaplain here.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm actually a priest of the Diocese of Columbus in Ohio, and although I'm not originally from Ohio, I'm from the state of New York originally, not the city, but upstate by Utica, Syracuse area, and but I came to Ohio really to study graduate school in the field of geology, as I like science a lot, and so I really enjoyed, especially the field of geology. So that's what I studied in graduate school, and then I got a job in Columbus dealing with groundwater pollution cleanup, and but really during that time I was kind of discerning the priesthood and wanted to kind of more completely dedicate my life to the Lord, doing His will, and so eventually I did enter the seminary, the Josephinum Seminary in Columbus, and then I got ordained almost 20 years ago now, and then I worked in several different parishes as a pastor, and had the chance really to study or to teach in some of the Catholic schools that I had, and also the catechesis programs of the parish, and really developed a great desire to teach, especially teens, just to go deeper in their faith. And so that's one thing I like to do in a parish setting, and also got involved with the Wilderness Outreach Men's Ministry, which was taking men out into the wilderness out west and going deeper in the faith through hard work and prayer and just supporting each other as men in the faith. And really, through all those experiences, one of the things I really developed an interest in related to St. John Paul II was the whole topic of the theology of the body, which you probably have heard of. And it's a wonderful gift that Pope John Paul II really gave to the church, which I can speak more about later in more detail. But I really developed an interest in that. And so with the permission of my bishop at that time in Columbus, I pursued a certification program in the topic of the theology of the body, which Christopher West puts on at his institute, the Theology of the Body Institute by Philadelphia. And so I worked on that over the past few years, finished that last year, and that was one of the reasons why my current bishop in Columbus asked me to look into being chaplain here at the John Paul II National Shrine. They were looking for a chaplain, and so I came to the shrine here last year, and it's been really a great experience here this past year, and so I really enjoy my work here and just really helping people to go deeper in the legacy and the blessings of St. John Paul.
Yes, I can see how that would be really wonderful because, you did this certification, you went on this wilderness retreat that all really support the mission of Pope St. John Paul II. And then to end up as chaplain, you're like, doesn't sound like it was really on your radar as much. And then the opportunity presented itself.
Exactly.
And it's always a good example to see how those moments of God's grace. It's
Exactly.
just leading you to
Hmm.
the next thing.
Sure.
So I'd love to know what it's like to be a chaplain here at the shrine,
Uh,
or maybe if you could even just share a couple experiences that you've
mhm.
had with people who have come and visited.
Yeah, it's really interesting being chaplain here. I do quite a variety of different things. Of course, the main thing I do is the sacramental support of the
Mhm.
shrine, because here at the shrine we actually have a church here at the shrine, and so we have daily masses that we have, and also daily confessions as well. We have exposition quite a bit throughout the week as well too, and there's a lot of different events that go on at the shrine which require the support of things like confession and adoration, which I assist with as well. We also have a whole department here at the Shrine called Mission and Ministry, which brainstorms on different programs and different things we can do for our pilgrims here. And so, as chaplain, I am part of that department, and so I help with some of the brainstorming and implementing some of those things. In fact, one of the things we did a few months ago was we were contacted by an organization that wanted us to construct a John Paul II novena. And so we decided it would be good to do a novena based on John Paul II's concern about life issues, dignity of life.
Yes.
And so each of the 9 days of the novena, we crafted to correspond with different stages of life, from beginning of life to end of life, as a way to pray for the dignity of life in our culture. So I helped with drafting some of the prayers and reflections of that novena. So that's just one example of some of the things that I do here at the shrine.
Wow. Could you share a little bit more about that novena? I'm really curious what reflections you came across, or was there
Mhm.
anything that in creating that novena that really stuck with you?
Yeah, well, yeah, we looked at different writings of John Paul about things like the dignity of the unborn, also the challenging youth to go deeper in the
Mhm.
relationship with God, and also the dignity of the poor and the marginalized in society, but also the dignity of the elderly, that they should not be seen as object or seen as disposable, that they have dignity as well as the elderly. So we looked at quite a few different documents and letters and writings that he made on those different topics, and so we pulled out as the challenge was really kind of to try to reduce it down to just a little bit each day, because there's so much you could really write about his reflections on the dignity of life and all those different stages.
Right. That's a hallmark of him, right? Is
Exactly.
this
Sure.
dignity
Yeah.
of human life. And you
Yeah.
can find something at all those different stages. You
Yeah.
know that he does have a deep love for
Hmm.
young people in particular. That was
Exactly. Yeah.
definitely another hallmark of
Uh,
his time as a pope.
yeah.
But also, he just had a love for people,
Exactly.
which I'm
Sure.
sure it
Uh-huh.
was like
Uh-huh.
overwhelming just how much you could draw from to make even a
Hmm.
9-day long prayer. That's a pretty long prayer.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And
But to pull everything for
yeah,
that, that's
he
amazing.
wrote so much you could come up with a 365-day set of reflections.
You really could. You maybe that's your next
So
project.
that's right,
There
exactly.
you go.
So yep,
There
so
you go.
exactly.
That's
Yeah,
wonderful. And I
yeah.
know you've mentioned a couple times too your draw towards helping young people in the
Mhm.
faith, and
Yeah.
especially with your study of theology of the body. Can you share a
Mhm.
little bit more about that?
Yeah, one of the things I like to do at the shrine on a fairly regular basis here is we have a lot of school groups that come through to our shrine at different times of the year, especially toward the end of the school year as well, when classes make their field trips to Washington. And so we get a lot of 7th and 8th grade classes, but also high school classes that come through. It's one of the practical things I like to do a lot of times is greet them when they come in the front door, and to kind of do a little pep talk with them to kind of get them excited about Pope John Paul II, because most of them, or all of them, would not have had any actual memory of John Paul, and so I
Right.
kind of helped them to realize that he had a great love for youth. And one of the things too that I enjoy doing with them, which many of our listeners probably know from different youth camps, is that call and response chant. God is good all
All the
the
time.
time. So I'll do that with the kids and get them to kind of yell that as loud as possible,
Yeah.
and get them excited about being here and learning about John Paul. And so that's one of the things that I like to do. And also with a lot of the groups, I like to take them into the side chapel we have called the Luminous Mysteries Chapel, because in there we have a wonderful blood relic of St. John Paul, a first class blood relic of his actual blood. And so I like to take them into that chapel and have them do some guided prayer. I'll kind of lead them in some prayer and help them to really see John Paul as a support to them as they're getting older and facing more of the challenges of life and temptations they go through. And for them to take some silent time in prayer, but also then to come up and venerate the relic as well, kneel down and venerate the relic. And then afterwards, I'll usually have them kind of exchange with each other a sign of peace of some sort, like a hug or fist bump or handshake, and just for them to support each other, almost like team members on a team wanting to get to the victory of heaven. So those are some things I like to do with the teens here at the shrine. And specifically, with the theology of the body, one of the things that well, first of all, just to kind of back up, just for our listeners who may not be as familiar with the theology of the body, just very briefly, what that is Pope John Paul back in the early years of his papacy from 1979 to 84, he gave several Wednesday audiences kind of talking about, reflecting on this topic of the theology of the body, which really is, in essence, about what it means to be a human person, especially as a combination of soul and body, including the whole realm of sexuality as well. And the kernel of his theology of the body is the fact that the visible body is able to actually communicate something of the invisible God, and that is total self-gift. God is Father, Son, Holy Spirit, the three persons of the Trinity giving themselves to each other as total self-gift. And his insights is that the human person, through one's bodiliness, is able to experience and to reflect that total self-gift as well. And that really has a lot of great implications about love, what really is love in the big picture, and how we can view others as persons rather than as objects. And also specifically how to experience the experience of beauty and one's desires in a holy way, even with the struggles that one might experience, to have hope in the redemption of one's desires, one's bodiliness. And so that's kind of in a nutshell what the theology of the body is. So one of the things we're working on here at the Shrine to help especially young people with this is I'm in a process right now of developing some retreat days where some of the school groups can come on site here, whether it be middle schoolers or high schoolers, and have a day-long retreat experience, so to speak, and really just go deeper in these themes from an experiential, prayer, meditative point of view, kind of letting the academic aspects of the theology about it that they may have learned about in school kind of sink down into the heart and have them to really bring their desires, their questions, their struggles really up to God in deep prayer to experience the support of Jesus and the saints, for them to go deeper in that challenge of holiness, body and soul as we're getting older. So that's kind of one of the things we're working on. And also kind of a parallel experience with young adults as well. We're working on that as well, kind of some retreat days, reflections for young adults and young adult groups that would like to come here too. So a lot of great potential in the theology of the body. So we're kind of working on some of those ideas here at the Shrine.
Oh, that's wonderful. And leading into this next question, as someone, I was barely alive when Pope St. John Paul II was alive. Like our time on Earth was maybe 2 years. Like
Okay,
at the
sure.
same time, and
Okay.
so I also have no memories really of this Pope, but have always found like a love for him because he was someone that I could still see on social media. Like I go on my Pinterest board, there he is.
Sure.
Like
Okay, sure.
you see him even on social media today, and
Uh-huh.
I find that really interesting because he's in the places of people that would have never known him when he was Pope, right?
Sure.
Never would have
Mhm.
seen
Yeah.
him. Where we're in a generation where we would know Pope Francis, right? We
Yeah.
would have seen his
Yeah.
papacy, but wouldn't have any memory of Pope St. John
Yeah.
Paul II. So I
Yeah.
find it really interesting that he's still in media, very, very relevant
Yeah.
to our generation. What
Yeah.
do you think it is about him that really sticks with young people even to this day?
Yeah, that's a great question because when I came to the shrine last year, that was one thing that really hit me is the fact that, it's been 20 years since he passed away. And so, really, most young people and even young adults would really have no memory of him. And so, how is it that we can really prevent him from simply becoming kind of an artifact of history? What relevance does he have to people of today's new generations? And I think he has great relevance, really, because he really brought up throughout his papacy and really spoke to the youth of that time about a lot of different topics and questions about life and existence in the world that really still resonate with youth today. For example, our identity, that's something that more and more is really out there in the culture today, that question of who am I? What is my identity? And he really spoke a lot about that, that really at heart, our identity really is as a person created by God in great love, and that we're called to greatness. We're called to union with God. He had this long, big picture vision of our existence, that we're not simply creatures of this world, but we're really in this world to prepare for an eternity of joy and union with God beyond anything we can possibly imagine. And that's really a big part of our identity, being loved creations of God, persons of great dignity. He also really spoke a lot about, what is our purpose in this life? And that's a common question a lot of young people today have. What is my purpose? Is there a meaning to life, or does life simply have no meaning, like a lot of philosophers and academics might argue? And also, how do I relate to others? As I look at other people around me, how do I relate to them as other persons who also have dignity as well, including in the realm of intimate relationships and sexuality? How do I relate to other people sexually, especially with all the confusion that goes on in today's world in that whole very important realm of life? Also, one topic that really resonates with me as well is the whole area of faith and reason, or faith and science. What role does science have in my understanding of reality, especially from my Catholic faith? And he spoke a lot about that. And again, that's a topic that a lot of young people kind of wrestle with as well. How do I integrate faith and reason? He had a lot to say about that. And finally, too, I think the topic, he spoke a lot about the topic of freedom. What is freedom? Is freedom simply just doing whatever I want to randomly, regardless of anybody or anything else around me? Or is there a deeper understanding of freedom? Maybe freedom as something that is able to open myself up to my true identity, my true relationship with God, and my ability, freedom as ability to go deeper in that relationship. And so he spoke really a lot about that, and also then how that ties in with social justice issues. um, how we relate to the poor, different social issues in our society. And so he really spoke a lot about that, similar topics that a lot of young people today are concerned about as well. So even though he died 20 years ago and became Pope, over 40 years ago, he's somebody that really still resonates very deeply with a lot of the questions and struggles and desires that young people today have. I think another thing too that really helps me to appreciate John Paul was his authenticity. The fact that he really lived a lot of the different topics and different concerns he spoke about. He grew up in a very difficult time there in Poland, first dealing with the Nazis during the Second World War, then the communists during the Cold War in the decades after. He really experienced true oppression and true persecution from others for his faith and for standing up for what is true and right. And he still had a great sense of hope in the midst of all that. And I think that is something that really can help young people today when you look at the turmoil in the world around us, is not to lose hope. And that Pope John Paul can really help us to make sense of some of the challenges we experience in our lives today. One of the things that I really wanted to share with our listeners is some tidbits from Pope John Paul, that he actually had to speak to the youth at the World Youth Day in 2002. In fact, I was in seminary at that time and actually had a chance to go up to World Youth Day in
Wow.
2002 up in Toronto, was when it
Mm-hmm.
was that year. By the way, he's the one that actually started the World Youth Days
Right.
back in the 1980s to really get the youth to go deeper in their faith, and they're still held, as you know, every couple of years around the world.
Mm-hmm.
But in 2002, when I was up there, he gave the homily at the mass he was at, which included, about maybe 800,000 people.
Yeah.
It's got a,
Right.
quite an interesting experience having a mass with 800,000 people. And
Mm-hmm.
but he had a lot of really great, encouraging things to say to young people. And I just want to just quote a couple of brief things that he had to say. And one thing he said was that holiness is not a question of age; it's a matter of living in the Holy Spirit. So it doesn't really matter how old or how young you are. Holiness is something that everyone is called to. And he encouraged the youth to that no fear is so great that it can completely suffocate the hope that springs eternal in the hearts of the young. Do not let that hope die. I think that really ties into that phrase that he really kicked off his papacy with, that phrase, be not afraid. One of the
Mm-hmm.
first things he
Right.
said when he became Pope, be not afraid. Yeah, not to let that hope be suffocated. And a great thing he said also at that homily is that we are not the sum of our weaknesses and failures, but we are the sum of the Father's love for us and our real capacity to become the image of his Son. Really powerful reflection. We're not the sum of our weaknesses and failures. We're the sum of the Father's love for us. So really great,
Mm-hmm.
encouraging insights. I think a lot of young people today kind of get frustrated or kind of overwhelmed with different challenges and feelings of weaknesses or failures of different kinds. But he said, no, have hope that you're really so deeply loved by God no matter what
Mm-hmm.
challenges you go through. So yeah, those are some interesting little quotes from John Paul's
Right.
2002 Toronto World Youth Day homily.
Right. And he was really an expert on some of those topics when you think about it, especially when it
Mm.
comes to challenges and purpose in life. And
Uh-huh.
when I was kind of thinking about the life of Pope St. John Paul II, especially his young life
Yeah.
and the oppression that he faced, it would have been
Mhm.
really easy to despair. It
Oh,
would have been
sure.
really easy
Hmm.
to look at the situations and not have hope for his purpose in
Yeah.
life. Like,
Yeah.
what can I do if, these are my passions? And
Yeah.
most of his passions were kind of had to be suppressed because
Yeah.
of the
Hmm.
circumstances that
Yeah.
he was in. And one of the things, kind of as we've been talking, is that idea of purpose of life
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
purpose in life, especially for people my age who, I
Sure.
just graduated from college
Okay.
and I have somewhat of a plan for my life, but it's
Uh-huh.
like I don't really know.
Sure.
And
Uh-huh.
even then, my plan has changed drastically in the time
Yeah.
that I've made it,
Yeah.
know?
N-
So I think that's
yeah.
really important to look to him
Yeah,
and
and
as an
that's great.
example.
That's a great point, E, because a lot of people are surprised to realize that he did not originally plan to become a priest. Actually, he was somebody that in his high school and also in his college years, he started out in college. He was able to get 1 year in college in before the Germans invaded Poland, and then he had to go underground to continue his studies. And but during that time, he actually loved the theater. He loved drama in terms of plays and things of that sort. And especially from a philosophical point of view, in Poland at that time, a lot of the uh, performing arts and theater were really focused on exploring a lot of the deeper philosophical meanings of life. And so he loved reading. In fact, he actually wrote some plays of his own that are still around that people can read. And but he really enjoyed the theater and acting. He had a great talent in acting. In fact, during the Second World War, when the Nazis were in Poland and keeping a close eye on different aspects of daily life, and really had a lot of different laws in place about things you could or could not do. One thing that was outlawed was doing anything related to theater. And so he and his friends, when he was in his college age years, had to do theater behind closed doors in secret, at nighttime with the lights turned off and that kind of thing. And so um, So yeah, he knew the challenges of trying to explore the different aspects of the meanings of life in a very difficult situation like that. Um, but in the midst of that, he discerned through a lot of prayer and a lot of support from others a deeper calling to the priesthood as he was exploring some of these topics of the meaning of life and who are we as a human person. It was only really later during the war that he discerned a calling to the priesthood. And so when he did, he entered the seminary studies there in Poland, but he had to do so secretly underground because if he had been found out as a seminarian by the Nazis, he would have no doubt been put to death because of that. And so it's really amazing to see his dedication to really wanting to explore these very important issues of human existence. And when he discerned what God wanted him to do, just really relying totally on God to help him through the challenges that would come with that. So.
Yeah. Now, I know none of us really like breaks from a podcast, but you know what one of our favorite breaks are? Coffee breaks. Always. There is always a good reason to get a great cup of coffee, and Patrice Roasting Company is your new go-to coffee company. Why? Because they are a Catholic coffee company. Their proceeds go to support local Catholic parishes. It really doesn't get much better than that. Most of us ask for just 10% of a tithe. They give 25% of their profits to support local Catholic parishes. You can check out the links in the description to order your new favorite coffee now. And while I have you here, I have to encourage you to send this immediately to any middle school or high school youth organization leader that you know of, whether that's a principal, a teacher, a faith formation coordinator, a religious education director, anyone you know, because I am booking for the 2025 to 2026 school year as a chastity speaker. I have a 1-hour long presentation for these students to encourage them to find their identity in God, recognize their human dignity, and take their relationships seriously and with intentionality because they are worth it. I would love to speak to your youth group this upcoming school year. You can check out the links in the description, www.theeverydaysaint.com, to learn more. Wow. He just has an amazing story, right? You can't help but look
Yeah.
up to it. And I wanted to too touch on the theology of the body and
Sure.
your reflections on it. Why is it important today?
Yeah, I think it's a hugely important topic today because uh, well, first of all, because of the fact that we all live in bodies. We're all, as a person, we're defined as a unity of body and soul, and so just for our own experience of living as a person, it's really important to know again who am I as a person and how do I understand who I am as a person, my bodiliness, and also the desires that God has given to me in a positive way, how to experience Him in a positive way. And so the theology of the body is something that really helps us to see that our desires really are ultimately designed to point us to things of heaven, to things of God. And St. John Paul really emphasized, as does our Catholic teaching, that sexuality in marriage is really itself a pointer to things of heaven. And so it's really a very beautiful, larger picture understanding of really what the body is about, what sexuality is about, and what the sacrament of marriage is all about. But also, too, I think his reflections on theology of the body are really relevant today as well because of so much of the sexual confusion there is in our society. And it's not that we're trying to be condemning or wagging our finger, but it's just observing that there is a lot of sexual confusion out there. A lot of people that are struggling with, what does sexuality really mean, and who is a human person as male and female, and so the theology about it really helps us clearly understand the deeper meanings of the sexuality. John Paul talked a lot about what was called the language of the body, that the body actually expresses a language within intimate relations in particular, and but also too, he really made the point that. In deep prayer, we can bring our desires to God and be able to receive from God what God might want to grant to us. In deep prayer is a sign of that deeper union we're called to have with God in heaven. Heaven being defined as total union with God, and as the saints talk about as well. So a lot of uh, beautiful insights into, again, who we are as persons, but also really a great help in understanding, making sense of the confusions out there in our society today about the body and about sexuality. So.
Yes, in your opinion, what do you think young people get wrong about theology of the body today?
You know, I think one of the challenges that young people face, and again, I'm not blaming young people because,
Right. It's
because
circumstances.
they often are raised in a culture and oftentimes too in educational settings as well that really, unfortunately, mislead them in terms of, understanding who they are. But I think one of the challenges, one of the temptations a lot of young people face is really the temptation to see others as simply objects to be used for my own gratification. Um, and of course, we don't want to look upon others as objects to be used as things. We want to look upon others as persons who also have dignity made in God's image and likeness. And so, how can I relate to somebody else as a person to be loved authentically rather than as a object to be used simply for my own purposes and ends and means? Because when you stop to think about it, if you're honest with yourself, none of us likes to be used as an object or a
Right.
tool. And so in fact, sometimes in my classes that I've done with teens or when I prepare couples for marriage as well, I will come out and say, would you like to be used as an object? Of course, nobody's hands get raised, and that with that question. Well, of course, we don't want to be used as objects, but we want to be respected and loved as persons. And that's really what the theology of the body helps young people to really understand. But yes, it's really a beautiful, positive vision about who we are. One of the things I like about the theology of the body in John Paul is that it's not a bunch of rules and regulations that
Right.
you better darn well follow these rules or else God will be mad and Father will be mad and you'll get zapped. But really it's a beautiful vision of who we are as persons, an invitation
Mhm.
really to go deeper in really authentically who you are in a positive way, something that we would want to embrace anyway. But John Paul really, in a very clear way, explains more deeply again who we are as human persons. So that's one of the reasons why I really enjoy being at the John Paul II Shrine because I get to really help people to see more deeply that vision of who we are as human persons.
Right.
So,
It's kind of like you have to understand the perspective of theology of the body rather than just its, or just sin in general. It's not just no's for the sake of no's or
exactly, sure,
discipline.
yeah,
It's I really appreciate this about JP too is that he did tackle this problem not from, oh, just don't do that. It's
sure,
no, if you recognize how much
uh-huh,
of a gift you are,
yeah,
then you'll see that this action doesn't even make sense,
sure,
or
exactly,
these
yeah,
sins actually don't make sense and
yeah,
they don't honor you and they
yeah,
don't
sure,
glorify the gift that you are and the gift
yeah,
that God made you to be. And I
exactly,
really appreciate that perspective because
sure,
no one wants to sit there and just be lectured at and
exactly,
told
sure,
no, but
yeah,
you have to understand the compassion for yourselves and the
yeah,
compassion for other people because of that
yeah.
those decisions that theology of the body warrants.
Exactly, yeah. And that's one thing I really enjoyed about my certification program with Christopher West. It was a very positive experience of just really exploring these deeper positive layers of meaning about the theology of the body and really pastorally how we can invite people to, especially young people, to go deeper in these truths that really, I think, deep down, authentically, I think a lot of young people really are yearning for. They're really searching for this kind of guidance and this kind of vision. And John Paul really provides that for us. That's why I still think that John Paul is still so relevant to us today, even though he died 20 years ago. I still think of him as, basically still around us today. Of course, obviously, as a saint, he's still helping us today to really go deeper in that spiritual life. So, yeah.
Yes. Do you think we're still struggling with a lot of the issues that he tried to maybe mitigate during his papacy?
Oh, yeah, there are obviously a lot of the issues that he faced, that we still face today, and all sorts of different topics. And because, the world, continues to evolve and change in different ways, and so there's a lot of different topics that we still grapple with today. But one of the things about John Paul is he provides us still with a really helpful blueprint in terms of how to continue to address some of these issues and topics. So yeah, there's a lot of issues that obviously he knew that he was not going to be able to solve overnight during his time as pope, even
Right.
though he was pope 26 years, so he
Right.
knew he wasn't going to solve overnight. But it kind of gave us a blueprint, kind of some principles to be guided by in the church's work in these different areas. And I think that's why you find the subsequent popes really often will quote John Paul II in many of their documents, realizing that, yeah, he had a lot of great wisdom to share, and he had a lot of great principles that we can still benefit from today. So,
Right. He talked a lot about love, and that I think that's really the basis of a lot of
mm,
his work, and especially with human dignity.
yeah.
How do you think that he would define love?
Yeah, how he would define love, I think very similar to how many of the other saints define love, like St. Thomas Aquinas, to where love is not so much a sense of the emotion, which are kind of passing, feelings, but really love is a decision, a free act of the will to say, okay, I'm going to do what is going to be best for this other person. I'm going to will the good of the other, decide what's best for that person, even if it might mean that it might require some sacrifice on my end as well. So yeah, love being a decision to will what's good for the other. Now, in the midst of that, even in the midst of sacrifice, there's hopefully some joy that comes out of that, because knowing that, oh yeah, I'm doing what's good for the other, and so that's giving me a sense of joy that I'm seeing the other person flourish and develop and grow. And even if it might require some initial sacrifice on my part, you see that really in family life, in a healthy family, for example, with the efforts of parents for their children. Their parents are called to love their children very deeply. But does that mean that every day is a wonderful, emotionally high, full of warm fuzzies for parents? Not really, especially when they have to change their kids' diapers and they have to deal with different frustrations that come with family life. So yeah, it's that sense of love being willing the good of the other, no matter the cost that might be involved with that, and also the deeper joy that comes with that. It's not a superficial kind of thing, but it's a deeper satisfaction knowing that I'm giving myself as a gift for the other person.
Yes,
Mm,
absolutely. And
mm,
as we wrap up, I'd like to open the floor to you if there's
mm,
anything else you would like to share, whether that's based on our conversation or anything
mhm.
that you'd like to share about the shrine.
Well, sure. Yeah, one thing I like about our shrine I would like to add is the fact that we serve really a whole variety and diversity of people that come here. It's a very, very inclusive shrine because we have all kinds of different ethnic groups that come here. Run into not only Hispanics, but people from different other, a whole wide range of countries around the world that come here to our shrine. We also have had events that have forged bonds between Jews and Catholics here as well. Back during Black History Month, we had a nice panel event here talking about Pope John Paul's visit to New Orleans back almost 40 years ago to really help Black Catholics in the country to go deeper in their faith. And we have special events, especially for young adults, particularly the ones called Evenings with the Merciful Jesus, abbreviated EMJ. And our sisters here, we have a couple of sisters from Our Lady of Mercy, Our Lady of Mercy order, the same order as St. Faustina. They're here on our shrine staff, and they are the ones that lead those evenings with the Merciful Jesus. And I help as with confessions and adoration with those. They're once a month, and so we reach out to young adults, especially with events like that. And and lastly, just to kind of show you some of the diversity we have, I was very surprised last August when I came here on a Saturday to come to the shrine, and I found in the back parking lot was two big, huge rows of motorcycles. And so we had a big, huge group of Catholic motorcyclists from Chicago that came here to
No way.
visit the shrine. And so, yeah, they're downstairs having lunch in their black leather, having their
Oh
pizza
my
lunch. And
gosh, yeah.
so yeah, we catered all kinds of groups here at the shrine. And so it's really a great diversity of people that come here. And it really helps to show in the larger picture just really how diverse and inclusive the
Mhm.
Catholic Church really is. Catholic meaning literally universal. And so I've often said that, in an authentic way, that we Catholics are the most diverse group of humans in the world. And being here at the shrine, I see that day to day. And it's one of the reasons why I enjoy working here at the shrine so much.
Oh, that's wonderful, especially with a pope who traveled so much. I mean,
Exactly. Sure.
his legacy really does live on. And
Yeah.
Father Bill, it was so wonderful to talk with you today.
Sure.
So thank you for coming on and sharing your story.
Well, thank you, Eve. Thank you.